Very good. Well, thank you. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces here. I'm sorry. Oh, Jesse's still here. Oh, well, good. Oh, good. All right. Well, we'll see if they paid attention. So I'm Scott Reinert. I'm the Water Resources Manager for El Paso Water. I've been there for 27 years as of March 1st. And the title of this presentation, I think some of you may have heard it, but it's a kind of an overview of what El Paso's done way back in the days of the Old West. And it kind of says that we had a very primitive water system back then. And what have we done over the years? Another subtitle might be the development of a diversified water supply portfolio. That'd be a sub-caption. But anyway, if anybody likes Willie Nelson, he has this old song and it's called 3 Days. 3 days that he's lonely because his lady left him. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, he's always going to be sad. So I'm hoping that this presentation isn't as sad as that song. But we are going to talk about 3 days of El Paso, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Yesterday goes way back in the Old West. Today is what's happening right now. And then we finalize it with a trip down Region E in our state water planning. Okay.
Space bar.
Oh, space. Oh, it's going to be space bar. Okay. So, little fun facts about El Paso. It is actually closer to Los Angeles and Denver than it is to Houston. So, we all know that Texas is a very big state. It has Fort Bliss, one of the largest military facilities in the country. Let's see, it has the Franklin Mountains, the largest urban state park in Texas, and it's right in the city limits. And lastly, it's there's some celebrities, Sharon Tate, Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac, Gene Roddenberry from Star Trek, the creator. They're all from El Paso. Sandra Day O'Connor, the Supreme Court judge, she's from El Paso. But I know that you have the biggest star here in Sul Ross. It's Haas from right, Bonanza. And then lastly, it's the birthplace of the margarita. That's important. So let me start off, and this is the old startup here. The Butterfield Trail went from St. Louis to San Francisco. It was a 2,800-mile trip. And along the way, it took 25 days. And they would stop in El Paso. They would stop in El Paso to water the horses, to get a drink, maybe change the horses, get a little refreshment along the way. And it was a long journey. This Butterfield Trail lasted for about 3 years. And then afterward, they got replaced by the railroad. And so it was kind of a thing of the past. Interestingly enough, the Butterfield Trail runs into El Paso, and then it stops suddenly, and then it gets restored out the edge of town. It urbanized, and they just kind of ran over the trail 50 and 70 years ago. But when we were building wells at the airport, Jesse might remember, they said to stay off the trail. And it was literally a little gravel road. And they said to not step on the trail. Anyway, that's a little sidebar note. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay, so this picture shows a primitive water system. It's before pipes. They're carrying water around in buckets. It doesn't have any pressure. There's probably some sand in it. It doesn't taste very good. Let's not forget about how they dispose of their waste. It's in little septic systems right next to their water systems. So there is absolutely no environmental regulations at all. And there was no TCEQ. And I think as a result, the life expectancy back then was much shorter. So everything that we do in the water industry, there are very rigorous rules actually preserve and make life last longer. And that's a benefit to this industry and the health effects. So in 1880s, the population was 800, and we built a first commissioned water supply, Sylvester Watts. They started laying pipelines in the streets of downtown El Paso. They were pumping water around, and mainly it was from river water. So here's a picture of the Old West. We had a lot of, we had a rowdy water system, no regulations, no rules, no nothing. And we had the Wild West. This is law enforcement in the Wild West. The big crimes of the day were cattle rustling, lots of things like that. So lots of bad behavior, and I think part of that was because the water tasted so bad and they didn't know what to do. In the in the 1890s, we constructed our first water supply well for El Paso. This was a 60-foot well, 13 feet in diameter. And as Jesse could tell you, our wells in El Paso are not like that anymore. But this was a well that was constructed, a big diameter. And as you would dig down deeper, you would secure rock or whatever you could find to stabilize the hole. And as they got down deeper, they would actually access the water table. And they did this because the river supply that they had been using was feast and famine. And like Kevin's, I was really honing in on your flooding concepts. Imagine El Paso, and the river supply was so wild and fluctuating. And sometimes when it's low, it's muddy, and they really didn't like the Rio Grande relationship back then. So they construct a well, and it's more predictable to work with. And so here's where this well was constructed, downtown El Paso, right next to the river. So that's why it was a relatively shallow well. If you had money back in the day, you would pay to haul water in from Deming, New Mexico. That's over 100 miles away. They would haul it in on carts, and I'm sure you could have fancy water drinking parties where you're drinking this high quality water, but that may have been a sign that the water they're getting in El Paso just really wasn't very good. So now we're going to take a little tour through history and the development of El Paso's water supply. Prior to this, El Paso had very primitive water. We had little cisterns, we had little shallow wells, and we constructed that first 60-foot by 13-foot diameter well. 1914, this is World War I. This is the first war that actually used aircraft. They used mustard gas, many casualties, and it was because of the assassination of the Archduke of Ferdinand. And this assassination led all the major countries into a war, and it was a very costly war in terms of human life. So what was El Paso doing at the time? Then they finally said, you know, we've got this well drilling thing down, and we're sick of the Rio Grande and Kevin's wild river fluctuations, mud. Nobody liked it. So they learned how to construct wells, and the wells were predictable. They can actually start constructing wells where they needed water supply for people. The water probably tasted better. And so that was what we were doing then in 1914. So from all that time, 1914 to 1941, we're happy with our wells, right? We like the wells. They're very predictable. And 1941, we have Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, United States joins the war. The bombing of Pearl Harbor lasted 52 minutes. It was on an early Sunday morning. And what's happening in El Paso, we built the Canal Water Treatment Plant. It's located in downtown El Paso. If you've ever been to the baseball stadium downtown, it's right next to that stadium. And this plant was built to provide additional water supply for the military. So war, military needs additional water supply. They built a river plant downtown. Okay, the 1950s, I asked, well, we got some young college students here. Do they know who these celebrities are? Okay, I heard Marilyn Monroe. They have the other one? Anybody? Well, huh? Joe DiMaggio. So, yeah, in El Paso, they say it's Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. So that's the 1950s. So what are we doing in El Paso? We are suffering through the drought of record. Normally for a crop, an irrigation release, I heard somebody talk about the releases from Elephant Butte. A good river year will run from February to October, and a crop would get 4 feet of water per year, okay? when it's a poor river year, limited water supply, they might get 6 inches of water. That's not enough to grow anything. So what they did is they started drilling wells up in Canutillo, that upper red dot. Yeah, I think my batteries are dead. But the upper red dot on this diagram, they drilled shallow wells near the Rio Grande, and they would pump these wells. They would flow into the riverbed of the Rio Grande, and water would flow down to this downtown river treatment plant. And so can you imagine that? They build a river plant in 1941. They've been using it, and then you get the drought of record. They get the drought of record. Oh, he fixed it. Okay, so there's that upper plant next to the Rio Grande, shallow wells, probably 200 feet in depth near the river, basically supplementing river flow. And we did this because the river was dry, but this action allowed us to use the canal water treatment plant. Again, drought of record. So for about 5 consecutive years, our river allotment was about 6 inches. Severe drought. 1960s, I'll ask the students back there. Oh. See, Jesse, I'm seeing if they're paying attention. Okay, that's the Beatles, the Fab Four, John, Paul, George, Ringo. Lots of great songs. I'm sure Steve can play that on his guitar, right? Lil? Okay, so what are we doing in El Paso? We're cultivating a culture of water wasting. We didn't know it at the time, but we said to be a good citizen in El Paso, you need to have a big house like this, and you need to water grass as far as you can see in your front yard. In fact, they even had contests in the newspaper that said, who's the best citizen? Who has the best looking yard in El Paso? Lots of green grass, and they're out actually watering it all the time. When I gave a presentation like this in El Paso, a woman older than me comes up to me and she said, when she was about 6 years old, her job was to stand out in the front yard and just dump water, all the brown spots. So this is not a culture of conservation. All right, 1970s, Richard Nixon, Watergate. What are we doing in El Paso? We are growing. The city's growing, and as we grow in El Paso, what is it we're doing for water supply? We're drilling more wells. As the city's growing, our wells are chasing the urban growth because wells were easy, they're predictable. We know how much they cost. The water was good. We don't have the river mud. We weren't even thinking about conjunctive use of using the river and the groundwater. This was groundwater's king, and let's just use it. So there's kind of our circle of influence. It's just getting bigger and bigger. Okay, so in the 1980s, things began to change in the world and also in El Paso. 1989, this is the Berlin Wall that separated East Germany from West Germany. The wall came down. I went to college with a student from West Germany, and he said this was a very momentous time in his life, and that might have been him up on top of there. He was that kind of guy. So what's happening in El Paso? Well, I told you we had such a thirst for groundwater. This is a kind of a water joke. Our diversified water supply portfolio was to try to get groundwater from New Mexico. So we actually filed permits to drill wells in New Mexico. The state of New Mexico objected. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said Texas cannot get New Mexico groundwater. This fundamentally changed our approach to water in El Paso. Prior to that is more wells, drill, baby, drill. This is a diagram of kind of our trend of groundwater pumping over all the years. And on the, you can see where I say trend of Waco pumping, this red line, this is the 1960s. Remember that house with the green grass? We're just growing, and our response to growth is just this trend. if we continued this upward trend to this current day now, look at how much groundwater we'd be attempting to pump, 120,000 acre feet. We were establishing a trend that at some point in the 1980s, we said, this is not sustainable. Something has to change. You can't keep doing this. So we did some good things back then. This line right here, that's the Jonathan Rogers Water Treatment Plant. That's located in our lower valley. It captures water from the Rio Grande. It was built with a capacity of 60 million gallons a day. And when the river's flowing, again, that's a big caveat. If the river's flowing and the Bureau of Reclamation and the irrigation districts, they all approve it, we're operating that at 60 million gallons a day. And after this was built, look at our groundwater pumping trend. We dramatically reduced the amount of groundwater pumping. This is good long-term management of our aquifer. What we like to call this is conjunctive use. We want to maximize river water when it's available. When it's not, we're going to have to pump more groundwater. So this is kind of the other side of the coin. If you look, you can see Jonathan Rogers here. And after the plant was built, we have significantly increased our our river water production. Prior to Rogers plant being built, this is that downtown river plant. So this plant really increased our amounts of pumping. But if you start looking here, you see some dramatically low points. This is 2003. This is when we started to say, oh no, the good days of Rio Grande and Elfin Butte are ending. 2003, that's probably when we started hiring our companies to start drilling lots of wells. That was our response. We needed to get our well pumping capacity up and pumping as much groundwater as we can. And then we had a few good river years, but then 2013, right here, less than 10,000 acre feet of river water in 1 year. In a good year, we want 60,000 acre feet. That's a huge swing. That's 50,000 acre feet less water from the river. How do we make that up? It's from more groundwater pumping. Okay, this is a picture of our assets that we have right now for water supply. If you live on, these are the Franklin Mountains that divide the town from east and west El Paso. Very beautiful mountains. They're kind of remind me of Big Bend a little bit. If you live on the west side, you get groundwater year round from these wells. These are canyon keel wells. We have about 30 of these wells. And what's interesting to me as a hydrogeologist about these wells, we have them completed right next to each other, but they're at different depth horizons because there's hydrologic separation between different layers. We can have a shallow well at 200 feet next to a deep well that's 1,200 feet, and they're not compromising each other's production. So it's a very interesting component of our pumping supply here. And on average, these wells produce, we're pumping them about 30,000 acre feet per year. And over the last 30 years, we've been right around 25 to 30,000 acre feet for these wells. And the city's growing a lot on that side. And we're not increasing so much. And the reason for that is our conservation program and our reuse programs. This has helped us stabilize the groundwater pumping out there. And then this is our canal water treatment plant, the one that was built in 1941 during World War II, helping us capture Rio Grande. This is the Jonathan Rogers plant, a river plant built in 1991, helping us capture Rio Grande because we said we want to use the renewable water supply. And then these are our Waco Bolson wells. We have over 120 wells in the Waco Bolson, and they're completed at various depths, anywhere from 200 feet if you're near the river to about 1,200 feet in some of these areas up in here. The Waco Bolson does have its management challenges. One is water level decline, and the other one is water quality changes from the lots of brackish water out in here. And as you pump it down, the brackish water is going to move into your town. So what we've been doing with our management program is an aquifer recharge program, which allows us to recharge the aquifer very beneficially. We've done this for 40 years, and we've recharged 80,000 acre feet of water. And interesting on that project, we're actually using reclaimed water that's treated to drinking water quality standards. So it's an old project, but it feels very new. There's people around the state. We're still the only city in Texas that uses reclaimed water for aquifer recharge. And if you do any kind of aquifer recharge, you have to have a source of water available to recharge. But it has to be clean enough. You can't just get any effluent that's not clean enough. You have to treat it to a certain level. And then these are our Waco wells. And we also have the water quality changes. We've addressed water salinity changes with our desalination plant. It's located near our airport. It is the largest inland desalination plant in the world. And we also have 10 wells down in the lower valley that have wellhead RO. So if you have salty water, you can use reverse osmosis membranes to clean the water. You're going to get a permeate, a very ultra pure water, and then you're going to get a concentrate. Now the concentrate's something you got to figure out. What are you going to do with your concentrate? It is a lifetime stream of salty water that most people don't want. And so at our desalination plant right here, we pump it 22 miles away to a 4,000 foot fractured limestone reservoir. I don't like to say the word aquifer because that means that you might drink it someday. Reservoir, I like that word better because it's a storage unit, geologically suitable for storage of brackish water. The water that's in this reservoir before we even inject it is 8,000 TDS. After 50 years of injecting, it might be 10,000. So we're really not changing this, and we're not inducing seismicity. I thought I heard somebody mention seismicity today. Did I? No, that might have been yesterday. We had another meeting. Okay. So we got to have a colorful maps to match Steve's colors and maps and Kevin's. So I have mine. It's not as sophisticated. It's not a cross section. Sorry. This is an overhead view of our two major supplying aquifers. They are in New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico. There is no groundwater compacts or regulation of how much any of these stakeholders pump from the aquifer. I do like to say that each of these entities is kind of responsible for what they're pumping. And we don't have any groundwater conservation districts here. Again, I mentioned the challenges of the Waco Bolson, water level decline and salinity, and we're managing that with aquifer recharge and a desalination. So the other part of this equation of our water supply is the Rio Grande. The Rio Grande receives, it's fed from snowpack in the Rocky Mountains, south central Colorado. On a good year, good snowpack year, we need 500 inches of snow. This past year, we got about 300. That's not enough. Alpine Butte Reservoir right now is at 11% capacity or 89% empty. So when you have a limited snowpack and the reservoir's low beginning right now, I don't know what our allocation is going to be. We're going to find that out shortly, but it's going to be very much similar to what we had last year. Last year, we had about 10 weeks of water from June through August. And it could get very hot in El Paso in May and September and those shoulder months of the season. And we have to meet all the customers' demands with groundwater pumping. So we are actively busy drilling and equipping and rehabbing wells to maximize groundwater production. And so when we talk about Alpine Butte and we talk about what does drought mean in El Paso for our customers, it's really kind of confusing because, every year in El Paso, we're in a drought. We might get 4 inches, 10 inches of rain. That is a drought every year. But for El Paso water, it's how much water is in the reservoir in any given year. And if you've seen the pictures of it lately, it looks kind of like Lake Mead. You see the low levels on the lake. And then Elfin Butte is 120 miles away from El Paso. So a lot of our customers, they just don't quite understand that relationship of the river supply is based on how much is in this. And I had somebody yesterday say, well, why can't we get more river water? Well, it needs more precip. It needs to fill up. Well, why? I just don't get it. Okay, so here is a 70-year history, and this is I think, the best snapshot of what the river supply Elfin Butte has been doing over the last 70 years. You remember when I mentioned the river supply being so low in the 50s, the drought of record, and we had to build the wells to supply water to the downtown river plant? Well, that's right in here. Drought of record, about 4 years of 6-inch allocations, not enough. And then we're kind of in and out of this drought cycle in the 70s. And then something really incredible happened. We started getting significant snowpacks every year up in the mountains. And then Elfin Butte filled up to capacity here at 2.1 million acre feet. And there was a period of time, nearly 20 years, where we get a full river supply. In fact, I've even talked to some of our river plant operators, and they said we get river water we'd run the river in El Paso supply from February to October, and even sometimes into November. That's how much river water there was. Now it's a much shortened season, and when water is limited in Elfin Butte, they allocate based on what's available, and the response is a much, much shorter season. And we receive water at El Paso, water like a farmer would, an irrigation release from the dam. And then something right around here, 2002, the river started to become dry again. And it looks like we're in a pattern like this pattern. But there was 20 good years of river flow and water supply from the river. And then it kind of changed again. And now our big question is, how much longer are we going to be in this cycle? And when can this happen again? We'd really like that. Okay, this is another way of looking at it. This is 2020 drought and very low. And then we had one good winter. I think that's when it really snowed a lot in February and March, and we got a good spike. And I think in this year, it was interesting that they allocated water. They started it in June, a late allocation start, but then it ran all the way to October. So I called it a half full season, unusual snowpack. Okay, so here's a picture of the dismal outlook for our river supply. Again, Elfin Butte is at 11%, 89% empty, and the snowpack is 52% of normal. This is our little sector of southern Colorado that we needed to snow in. We don't really care if it's snowing in Denver or Grand Junction or Pueblo or Fort Collins, but we want it to snow around Creed and Alamosa and Taos and these mountains. That's where our Rio Grande watershed is filled up. Actually, Kevin's Rio Grande too. So, all right, so here's some more. And we're starting to follow these weather trends, El Nino, La Nina. And right now, I don't think they really know exactly. It can go either way. Warm temperatures, we've seen some of these great warm temperatures recently, right? So we are actively looking at temperatures, and it really promotes our thinking of working on drought-proof strategies for the future. So there's a picture of Elfin Butte when it's full. That's 2.1 million acre feet. That photo was taken probably in the 1990s. You can see that there's no bathtub rings there. Okay, and that's what it looks like now. The lake is much lower. That's that high water mark. And you can see, a lot more islands. So this is a response to drought is building this desalination plant. It was in 2007. And the story behind that is that the military thought that Fort Bliss did not have enough water for its future. So the city and Fort Bliss worked together to build this plant. And it was an investment in El Paso's future. The plant cost $93 million. And as a result, we had over $1 billion of economic impact. So sometimes a community may be afraid to build a water supply, but once you do, the economic benefits are significant. So here's a little bit of the detail of the desalination plant. We're treating water that's around 4,000 TDS. So that's water that you wouldn't want to drink. You could probably taste it. We have 16 source wells. Those are the yellow dots, and they go into the reverse osmosis plant. That creates, the source wells go through reverse osmosis. That process creates an ultra pure permeate. The permeate is too pure to put in our pipeline. It has a dissimilar chemistry to our pipelines, and you would create a Flint, Michigan corrosion problem. So what we do is we use the RO, make a very aggressive permeate, and then we add naturally brackish groundwater back to it, and it makes a finished water quality very similar to the rest of the water in our system. So it's kind of funny. You tell a membrane, you have one job, and that's to remove all the salts from this water. You can't say move half the salts. The membrane says all or nothing. You say take it all out. But that water's too aggressive, so then you got to blend it back. Then the other part of the equation is the concentrate. And the concentrate is pumped 22 miles away. In fact, I remember back in the day, Jesse was working on those injection wells. The injection wells are, they're 4,000 foot deep. They're in a fractured, let's see if she remembers the formation. What? Yeah, Fusselman Formation. It's Ordovician. It's very old rock, 4,000 foot deep. It's fractured. A lot of people ask me, is that the same aquifer that you get your water from? And I say, no. This is 22 miles away. It's 4,000 foot deep. And the wells here in town, they're shallow, relatively shallow, 1,000 foot alluvial wells, sand and gravel formations. Oh, here's my animations. There's the reverse osmosis plant. 27 million gallons a day capacity. We are working on a project now to increase it to 33 million gallons a day. There's the source wells. Source wells have a TDS around 4,000 TDS. The blend wells, those are what are added to the permeate to create our finished water. There's our deep disposal site. And right now the plant's probably running about 18 to 20 million gallons a day. Now, so we've talked about yesterday and today, and I've got a little wizard here to talk about our future. This is tomorrow. So part of our regional water planning group, I know I've seen a few familiar faces there in the regional planning process. We just finished our 2026 plan, and we're going to start working on our 2031 plan. And the first part that you do in that planning is you start talking about population growth. So we're going to start putting our arms around population growth and seeing if everybody can live with their population projections. We had quite a stir in Region E about the population in 2026 plan is much less than in the 2021 plan. So you 2021's like this, 2026 like that. So it'd be interesting to see what our 2031 plan is. Are we somewhere in between? So a little bit on the regional water planning process. The state of Texas has 16 planning regions, and El Paso's in the same region here as Alpine, Marfa, Fort Davis, Del City, Sanderson. So it covers 7 counties. and we're going to start doing it again. But a state water plan is analysis of population, future demands, existing supplies, and new water supply projects needed for your future. So here's a news flash. El Paso's population is increasing, so we're going to need new supplies for our future. So the water supply strategies that we have are conservation. The state water planning process allows us to treat conservation as an added supply. And you might say, well, how does that happen? If your population is increasing, but your per capita demand is decreasing, that difference, the state allows that to count as a supply. So we actively use that. We fully are on board with conservation. We incentivize our customers to conserve. And if that doesn't work, we'll raise their water rates a little bit. That's the ultimate tool of getting people to use less water. Then I haven't mentioned this, but I heard some talk about it, this advanced water purification. That's kind of the old branding. Right now, we're calling it the pure water center. So we paid a consultant $1 million to come up with that name. Just kidding. But it is called the Pure Water Center. It's a short, concise description of what that's our marketing, our branding of this project. And on this project, we want to talk about the quality of the water and not the history of the water. We want people to get away from this, oh, what was that water? Well, dinosaurs pooped in it. Get over it. We have the technologies to clean this water. And I heard somebody mention, is Trey talking about water reuse. I think it's a great question for everybody. And using water reuse, I don't know how much Alpine uses, but using reclaimed is the start to your using it for irrigation is a start on this journey for any community. To me, water is too precious to only use one time. So use it, clean it, use it again. I think there's incentives to doing that. And then you're not using as much groundwater. Then we have our Waco Bolson Aquifer Recharge Program. We have a wonderful aquifer recharge program, 40 years of using Fred Hervey wastewater effluent that's treated to drinking water quality. That's been going into our aquifer with these basins we've made. And we're working on improvements that are going to bring even more available river water when the river's flowing, and we'll be able to even recharge at a higher rate. Our high-end expectation is 17,000 acre feet in a year for aquifer recharge when the river's flowing. And then we have our Del City importation that would begin in the year 2050, starting off at 10,000 acre feet. And it is something that we've acquired land, water rights. We're working on a pipeline easement. And it's any project like this, especially Del City, it's going to have to be done thinking about the cost of water. And everything we do is to supply water to our customers at an affordable, reasonable rate as best as we can. But we have it there. It's something that it's scheduled for 2050. Now, does it happen? We're preparing for it, but things always seem to change, and that's why we have our state water planning. Every 5 years, we're updating things. So when we do our 2031 plan, the big question I have is, when are we going to see the need for importation? So here's a description of our water conservation journey. Back in the day, those big, huge grass lawns of the 60s, we had no care in the world about watering. In fact, you didn't pay for the water that you used. You had a flat fee. People just said, well, what the heck, just water. Dump that water on there. It doesn't matter. It's just a flat fee for everybody. So then we started introducing you got to pay for what you use. And people said, oh, I don't think I want this much water. And then we started decreasing it. We had incentives, the plumbing fixtures, turf abatement, shower heads, and we've dropped it. And as we go into the future, in our state water plan, we hope to drop it down to, I think 2080 is down to 112. So that's something that we'll be monitoring and seeing if it's trending downward. If it's not, we kind of analyze what's happening, maybe add some extra incentives of what to do. I learned recently, Las Vegas, Nevada, they get less rainfall than El Paso, 2 to 4 inches annually, and they have pretty much outlawed ornamental turf on medians, and it's you could be penalized and fined. So they don't want any turf watering, and they pretty much outlawing turf because it's such a water user, and they're aggressively going after that. So these are some of the tools in the water conservation toolbox. Toilets, air conditioning, washers, gray water harvesting. I think these are all things that are in the mix for consideration. So the purified water, I didn't talk so much about that. Let's see. It's water that's treated to meet irrigation standards. It's put it into the river, but in this case, we're going to, before we put it in the river, we're going to treat it 5 more times. Reverse osmosis, UV, membrane filtration, chlorination, and GAC. We're going to do all these things, belt and suspenders, and this effluent is going to be purified, and it'll be an added water supply. It's scheduled to be online in year 2030. Oh, here's the steps: membrane filtration, RO, advanced oxidation, granular activated carbon, and chlorine disinfection. Here's a rendering of our aquifer recharge program. We are working to, we're building these basins now, be 7 kind of linear basins, and we'll have some hiking trails along there. Beautiful Franklin Mountains in the distance. And there's a Del City. I think they got a new fixed up sign now, but there's a picture of Del City, and our Del City project is scheduled for 2050 at 10,000 acre feet. So as we look into the future, we have a diversified supply. We have Rio Grande, we have the Waco Bolson, the Mesilla Bolson, desalination, importation, and other can be projects like the pure water, more and more reclaimed. And I think what I expect in our future water plans is more and more pure and reclaimed water. And getting to the end here, but El Paso has met its challenges and will continue to use innovation and diversified water supply to meet the challenges of living in the desert and in an arid environment. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you. Yes.
On our ASR, the moratorium on those permits.
So, yeah, so our Fred Hervey, our ASR project, I get asked this question, but it is it's under our wastewater permit from in the 40s. And I know the state is working on getting ASR programs and permitting, and ours is all still part of the wastewater discharge permit. And because it's treated to drinking water quality, it has gone fairly smoothly. We recently renewed our wastewater permit, and it has all the same information of our discharge point as before, and that's how we're going forward. But I do understand that there's new permitting processes for ASR in Texas. Oh, moratorium. Yeah, I think they should. Right. Oh, rainwater. Oh, yeah. It's funny because on several levels, like the state water planning, they say aquifer recharge, great, and then TCEQ says, hold on a minute, we got all these concerns and rules. To me, if the water's treated to meet drinking water quality, and you got to do that. And once it meets that, then I think you should be good. If you're trying to do it like the level of treatment we do when we discharge wastewater into the river, that's at a less stringent standard. But this water that we're recharging, it's drinking water quality. So it's gone through a lot of extra hoops than just river discharge. Yes.
You're showing here, is it mainly just surface basins that are generally flooding to allow to?
Yeah, they're surface basins. Our big challenge there is the geology and having the correct geology. Well, my answer to that is that what we want to do is you want to see the water and then you want to see it disappear. We want it to it's a thirsty aquifer. And we're not doing this really for ornamental purposes of pond, and it has a disposal function from a wastewater side, and then it has a recharge element from a water resources side. So really, we want to see the water just disappear. And when it starts to slow down, it means that the basin needs some maintenance. We stop injecting or spreading in that basin, and then we do a little maintenance. We strip off the top layer of silt and whatever, and then it restores the rate of infiltration. We've had that question asked. I know the state of New Mexico, for water rights purposes, they're quantifying every molecule. We know that it's going downward, and we don't really keep it as a pond that's subject to as much evaporation. Yes.
Incentives for people to reduce water. What are your thoughts on, for example, businesses reducing water?
On businesses? Yeah, so I think when I talked about trying to get our water conservation trend down to where we need it to make sense in our state water planning, we're actually looking now at different segments of our society, and our residential folks, they may say, I can't do anymore. I don't have a yard in the front. I don't have a yard in the back. I have refrigerated air. I have plumbing fixtures. And we may say, our work is done at your house. Okay, we can't do any more. But then we look at our business and industry, and I think we're going to start finding, to your point, though, that's the next low-hanging fruit. I think I don't have the details on that. I look at it from more of a higher level perch, and my question is, are we trending this way? And then our water conservation department would say, no, we're not. And they would say, okay, we need to step it up. And they are identifying different segments of the population. I'll give you another example. Parks, they're famous for just watering whenever they want, time of day. Everyone else complies with time of day watering, even odd watering. But the parks, they just do it whenever they want. And it's like a lot of water going into the air in a hot El Paso day. Not really efficient. Question? Yes. Go ahead. Martha hat. I got to get a hat like that.
Big thing, wiring fast. But he might buy a house in gallons. Yeah, used to be a mouse. And they had a waterfall coming out. Like on one of the walls of the waterfall. I said, hey, why don't you have a waterfall? She says, it doesn't be certain that water comes in, goes right out the window. So it's like, no. Yeah, and so back then, 8-year-old one. So they would just go in the house and put waterfall gas and go straight out. That goes, man, I can't afford it. So you use that in storage.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Looking at your distribution of water, you have a tremendous amount of sources. All kinds of places. How do you manage the water quality, water industry within the distribution system itself? There's so many different sources. How do you predict what precipitates that source and what caliber of waters will they have?
Very good question. We have a let's see if I can go to our station map of El Paso. Right. There. Right around here, we have a laboratory. It's called the International Water Quality Laboratory, and we are constantly analyzing samples from all of our different facilities and to answer that very question. And they even have, like, the desalination plant has a laboratory on site. They're constantly evaluating the chemistry, and it's a very important part of our process. And we want to make water so that our customers, they know that we have a diversified supply portfolio, but we don't want them to know, hey, this is River Day, or this is the desalt plant, or when we get the Pure facility built, we want them to say, all of our water tastes good every day, and I don't know where it's coming from, but you guys know what you're doing. We don't want it to, and so the quality and the chemistry, even the taste, needs to be very similar. That's kind of the answer to that, but it's a lot of laboratory testing. Yes. That is, I think when we treat water as a commodity, a willing seller and a willing buyer in the irrigation district lets pecan farmers work with us, and they can incentivize that. So they have an item of commerce. We would buy their savings and pay them what the market rates are for conserved water that we could use at our plants, acquiring more water rights. But that's just my opinion. The irrigation district has lots of thoughts about that. Yes. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you.